KC Cares, Kansas City's nonprofit voice. We're telling the stories of Kansas City nonprofits and the people behind them. KC Cares is the intersection of the nonprofit and profit communities, making Kansas City a better place to live, work, and play. This KC Cares segment is brought to you by the Ewing Marion Kaufman Foundation, www.kaufman.org. I'm Ruth Baum-Biggis. For parents of youth who are on the autism spectrum, finding meaningful summer activities can be challenging. But no challenge was too high for the founders of Camp Encourage, Kathy Otten and Kelly Lee, who both have degrees in special education. With its mission to provide youth on the autism spectrum meaningful experiences in which they build knowledge, courage, and skills, Camp Encourage has been offering overnight camp experiences since 2007. As demand increased to attend the camp, Otten and Lee have embraced the hurdles of a growing organization. Well, today, co-founder Kelly Lee joins us today to talk about this remarkable organization, as well as what they are doing to keep the momentum growing. Kelly, thank you so much for being with us. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
So let's start off. Tell us a little bit about your story and how Camp Encourage, started, came to be, the concept, everything.
Sure. So Kay Otten and I met. I was in grad school. She was in doc school. And at the time, there was a nonprofit that was providing services to youth on the autism spectrum. And they were doing a number of different things. And one of the things in which they were doing was providing an overnight camp for individuals on the spectrum. And Kay and I got involved as students and then volunteers, and then both had directed the camp for a number of years. And then had stepped away for a number of reasons, me starting a family, and her career. And the nonprofit itself closed. And we were contacted by a number of different parents and prior campers that said, you cannot let this leave the Kansas City area. Again, I was a new wife, and then shortly after a new mom, and my gig in a local school district was super sweet. And all my cards seemed to align perfectly, right? So we kind of resisted all of these nudges, and then couldn't after a while, because as they were saying, like, nobody can just take the reins and do this without prior experience. And so we just couldn't ignore the nudges anymore. Took it on, I think, kind of thinking it would just be this cute little, summer side gig as we continued our careers in the field of education. And so we started with a super small group of campers. In 2008 was the very first year after getting our nonprofit status in 2007. And interest grew just like mad, with very little marketing, very little social media presence. That it was clear very quickly that there was a need for this service, specifically in our area. So it grew and has grown immensely since then. This is our 17th year, and we have already grown by about 4 times the amount since then, and continue to grow. So it's beautiful.
How brave of you to take that on, though. It is no easy gig when you have this passion and this idea, and then you say, okay, we're really going to make it happen. And you were working, right? As
Yes.
well as your colleague. So share with us, give us that inside look of how you made that happen with all these other balls you were juggling already.
Yeah, I think we both just felt so passionately that it had to happen that, we didn't. I will joke that if I knew all of the details and the ins and outs that need to be in place, that I know now, it would have totally intimidated me. And I don't know that I would have thought that I could have done it. But because of all the amazing people that I swear our campers are just magnets to these amazing supporters and volunteers, with them, joining us along the way and standing beside us. And, it's happened. It's all unfolded. But again, had we known, it would have definitely been overwhelming. But I think just fueled by love, right? You just figure it out. You just take one foot in front of the other, and it all just fell into place.
So as you all took the reins of this amazing camp, um, what were the steps to really make it happen? You already had a group of campers that you knew, and I'm sure were chomping at the bit to come back. How were those first few years and moving forward?
Finding the right people that had a heart for what we were doing, right, was immense. I think one of our biggest reasons that we have been so grounded and stable was due to the support of Nonprofit Connect, is having that resource locally to nonprofits. It's been a huge source of education and resources and connections. So that was a huge help that not very many cities can speak of having in their community. So we're so lucky to have that. And also, UMKC is a fantastic resource. So just finding, people that saw that we really had this passion, but also I think the skills. Yeah, it was definitely helpful in the early years.
To make those connections. All right, before we talk about the journey that continue on that journey, I want to find out and share with our audience exactly what Camp Encourage is, what you do with the kiddos, and even the kids that are involved. We talk autism spectrum, and I think that's a huge array. So the floor is yours, madam.
Okay. All right. So first I'll just share like what our services are, what our programming currently is. The heart of what we do is provide overnight camps for individuals on the spectrum, ages 10 through 18. And then we also have alumni camps for those that are now 19 and older. And those camps are what you think of when you think of a summer camp, because we believe they deserve to be treated like any other child and have the same experiences as any other child. So there's horseback riding, zip lining, lots of STEM activities, outdoor education, science-based, music-based, art-based activities. So it's very much like a typical camp, but what makes it so very special and unique is that it's really individualized and catered to their specific needs, right? There's lots of professionals involved that really care about and understand this population. And then something else that makes it, I think, pretty unique is that we really value autistic adults that are living on the autism spectrum. So we find ways to include them, to have their voice heard, to make sure that as we are changing things, it is, very much thinking of their needs and their perspective. And so that, weaving them in as volunteers and as leaders as well at our nonprofit is important to us. Always saving 2 seats on our board for individuals with autism. So I think that has helped us just shape really quality programming as including them as well. So outside of our 5 overnight camps, we also will get the campers, whether it's current campers or potential campers, as well as supporters and volunteers. We have free camp family events throughout the year. So it might be a swimming party or canoeing and fishing. We have a holiday winter party in the winter months. And then we're getting ready to host a panel of autistics that kind of reflect and share on, their lives and their experiences to, open the eyes to others as well. So again, the heart of what we do are those overnight camps.
How do you let's ask this. How many kids are in a session? And talk about, go ahead, please.
There are about 55 individuals in each of the camp sessions. The alumni sessions are about half that size.
And so how do you individualize that? Tell us a little bit about staffing and what the camp day even looks like.
Parents and caregivers first, just share so many details about what keeps their child alert, what calms them, what could trigger, certain things. And so our staff, really appreciates all that input, and that helps us prepare. And what was the second question again?
Well, how do you staff that? You have 55 campers in a 3 to 4 day session?
We do. And
so how does that happen?
Yes, that's a great question. Remember how I mentioned just all the beautiful people that like magnets come to support these campers? I am our only full-time employee. We have 7 other employees right now that are all either part-time or very, very seasonal. And so those 7 people are usually at all the camp sessions. And then in addition to that, there, like for our summer camp sessions, there are about 150 individuals that are there volunteering. Probably about less than half of those are there full time, so they commit to all 4 days. And then the others are there just for small bits to help at a carnival to kick off the week, to stand on the side of the drive as as campers are entering, holding signs that say "You are enough, you are welcome, you are loved, you are valuable." And then for our weekend sessions, there are probably closer to 100 volunteers involved in each of those.
Volunteers are really important to you. Is this an opportunity for the community to help?
Absolutely. Yes. There are lots of different roles from high schoolers that might be thinking that working with individuals who are neurodiverse, that might interest them. This is a great hands-on opportunity that's really like no other. As a prior special education teacher, it was so eye-opening for me when I started getting involved in something like this as a young professional, because we think we know so much of what these, the youth need, but we often forget what the family is also going through 24/7. And so it's a great opportunity to open your eyes to, really residing and staying overnight and loving on, those kids at all times of day and not just focused on education. So it was eye-opening for young professionals or young potential professionals. So anyone in undergrad or grad school, we get a lot of those students. Anyone currently in the profession, or really just anybody that has a big heart for creating a space where people just want to feel loved and welcomed for exactly, who they are and where they are. So we've got lots of different types of volunteers and lots of different needs, from it just being a couple hours to, the duration of the camp itself. And then also outside of camp, we have volunteer opportunities in our office.
What's the best way for people to connect with you if they want to volunteer? How can they reach
Yeah.
you?
Yes, they can visit our website at campingcourage.org, or they can simply send an email at info@campingcourage.org, and we'll send them, help tailor whatever it is that they might be interested in, and let them know what the opportunities would be.
Now, do you put your volunteers through training so they're not just coming in cold saying, "Hi, I'm here. You have my time."
For sure, especially those that are there for the duration of camp. Yes, they go through a good amount of training.
Where is camp? We failed to say where camp is.
Our overnight camps are currently at Heartland, the Heartland Retreat Center in Parkville, Missouri.
Let's talk about the campers specifically. How does that work? Do they put in an application? Is there any kind of screening process? Because as we mentioned a few minutes ago, the spectrum is wide.
It is. And I'll first share that when we started with that tiny group of campers in that first year in '08, Kay and I said, hey, let's start with this, a certain population of the spectrum, not all individuals. And let's do that because at the time, and still now, there are a number of great camps in Missouri and nearby that work that support individuals that need one-on-one or more intense support constantly throughout camp. And so what was occurring back then was those that maybe that wasn't a great fit for may have gone, and it just wasn't great programming for them. It wasn't quite the right fit because, like you said, the spectrum, they're all such unique individuals, and no one model fits all of them. So they were either going to camps like that and it just didn't feel like the right fit, or they were trying to go to typical camps because maybe they're like amazing at chess, or they really love music, but that setting just wasn't staffed or set up to meet their emotional or their sensory needs, or to really understand just, their needs in general. And so when we started, we said, then let's focus on those that don't need a one-on-one ratio. Our current staff ratio is like 2 campers for 1. So it's still a pretty high ratio,
Right.
or 3 campers for 2, but we are not providing one-on-one support. And when we started, we thought, let's start with this, and then we'll expand to also provide services for one-on-one support. But what we found when our third year, and again, like we were not doing marketing, I'm not even sure if we had much of a social media presence those first few years. We had a waiting list of 100 kids after doubling our services by the third year. And so we knew that, gosh, I mean, we've still never had a formal marketing plan. We're just kind of initiating some of those efforts. So we know that the need is there. And so we have continued to stick with that. So the campers that we're serving are okay with a ratio of 1 adult for every 2. Many of them need support, like one-on-one support for specific things, and that is totally okay as long as it is not for the whole duration of camp, because there are other camps that provide that. Our campers are between the age of 10 and 18. They're, fairly independent with self-care skills, able to tolerate the outdoors, right? Like if that is an intense fear of somebody that might not be the best setting, again, no one program is a great fit for every individual on the spectrum. And another big thing is we like to let families know that they will not have electronic devices unless it's used as a communication device or something, and set up for that. They have to know that going in that will, be something they'll be without. And it has surprised us how beautiful that's been to not have devices and phones with them for the duration of camp. So that's
good for you.
Yeah, it's nice. It's a beautiful thing, going old school.
We're talking with Kelly Lee. She is co-founder of Camp Encourage. So you got camp set up, you're chugging along, and you're growing, and you're growing, and you're growing. Let's talk about how you all are managing growth. As you said, you're the only full-time employee. Heavy preponderance of your programming in the summer, but you're doing year round. So how are you managing growth? What are those things that your organization is doing to figure this out?
Yeah, well, first I should say, I'm immensely grateful for our board of just such strong leaders that have continued to shape really beautiful strategic plans that have been our flashlight and our guide as we grow. I think one thing that I'll share that's been really important for us that we value is that camp should be available to all. And so we haven't grown in a we've grown a lot, but we haven't grown in what could be a really rapid way, because we want to make sure that families are able to come, that it's equitable, that we have scholarship funding available for them. Each year, about 60 to 75% of our families request and receive scholarships, either partial or full. And so that's always been really important to us, that as we grow, that percentage stays the same, again, for equity. And to make sure that it is something that is there for everyone. So that's something that's, as we grow, we had to make sure that we are financially stable and that we have that scholarship funding available and that that's not limited. And then the other huge thing, so there's probably 3 things that have been a little challenging. That could be a challenge that we've continued to thankfully meet. Another one is volunteers, right? As we grow, because we rely so heavily on those volunteers. That's been something that we've had to be really mindful of, in just continuing to secure sufficient volunteers as we grow. We're hoping to add another camp session by 2026. So that's something we're working really hard to continue to establish good relationships with our current pool of volunteers, but also find new volunteers to help us grow. And then the last challenge is that we rent our campgrounds, right? From an amazing place, and they're crazy accommodating and so welcoming, but they may not always have space for us as we continue to grow. And so another challenge is looking at other possible locations for that growth, still here in Missouri and Kansas, or seeing how we can squeeze in and convince our current camp to allow us to grow there. So those are kind of our the 3 challenges that we're addressing as we grow.
So goodness, I would think running a camp has expense on its own, and you rely a lot on volunteers. What does it cost to run a camp session?
To run our 5 camp sessions, our budget is a little over $500,000.
Wow.
So biggest expenses are, reserving the camp, the lodging, the meals, especially when we have that many volunteers and everything, the quality activities and supplies. A lot goes into it.
And do kids so they apply, I assume, to come to camp?
Mhm.
Is there a screening process that goes on?
Yeah, they're like, as I was kind of listing, these are the kind of kids that we serve. There's, checklists that parents go through just to confirm it's
Right.
going to be a good fit, that they're going to like the activities that, that are offered. And so, yes, there's a lengthy application process. Very rarely does a parent get through that where we may call up for more information, right? That we may be concerned about something that could occur. We're often pretty able to meet their needs with, detailed plans and such. So,
What does a session cost? I assume campers, you said it's up to 75% get some kind of scholarship, but what's a session so our audience has an idea?
yeah, for the 4-day session, it's $12.95. And then for the weekend session, it's $5.95. But again, with every application, we encourage every parent to consider applying, and some don't. Some have outside funding also that they use, but we really greatly encourage families to go ahead and apply for consideration.
And I'm sorry to be so heavy on the money, but it is for you because it's such an intense experience in terms of 2 to 1 and what you offer and what of that. All right, so let's talk about the big bad guy in the room, right? Money, budget, fundraising. So where do you get your funds to support this wonderful program?
Yeah, we have a beautiful, diverse pool of funds, for, like whether it's individuals that have been supporting us for years. Camps for Kids is a local nonprofit that supports camps and helps provide scholarship funding. They've been a beautiful supporter of ours for years. Lots of local foundations, some corporate support through sponsorships of our signature event, and then our event also will generate some support as well. And that's called S'mores and Pours, and it takes place in October, and it is a really fun event.
So when do you put out and how do you put out information about this? This s'mores and more sounds fantastic. What fun.
It is so fun. It's kind of like a typical gala in that there's an auction, right? A live auction, an online auction, a fun to need, a dinner, but it's so not like any other gala, just in that it's camp themed. So there's roasting s'mores by the campfire. There's everybody in camp gear, so people are in plaid, and it's just this super comfortable, almost sort of family reunion like affair. Videos are showcased, created typically by someone local named Tyler Workin, where he comes and spends time at camp and collects stories on our campers. And so those are always shared at S'mores and Pours. So it's just a really heartwarming night.
That sounds so great. How fun. All right, I got to mark that on my calendar. Sounds like a fun thing to go and do. You've been in this field for a long time as a professional teacher. I imagine maybe doing a little administrative stuff over time. What is it about working with these kiddos that inspires you? What keeps you going? It's not easy to run a nonprofit, let alone a nonprofit that then is working with people who are neurodiverse.
Mm-hmm. Um, that they're all such individuals, right? Like that's so fascinating to me to get to know each person. That many of them are very misunderstood. Like what appears is really not who they are and how capable they are. And so I just have this passion to help pull that out and let those things shine. And I think that's what drives me and all of our board members and my staff and volunteers, just in that they see that this is such a unique setting where these campers can grow in amazing ways in such a short window of time. I mean, it's just really like no no other setting. Hard to describe until you're really there. So it's just that. It's that wholehearted belief in what we do and seeing the impact on them when they're there.
Now, you mentioned you actually rent the space where you are in the summer. So how do you bring in those elements like horseback riding and other things? Are they already part of this retreat center, or do you have to bring it all in? Oh, they are part of it. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, they have horseback riding that's available there. They have wranglers that are there to oversee it, and they're, really wonderful with our campers and meeting their needs and being patient with them. And same thing with like the zip lining, that is also available there on the campground. So those are all things that they will provide for us. Swimming, they have some other things too that we can rent, like inflatables, like slides, things like that. So those things are already there. Other things we do on occasion bring in just to mix up some of the activities.
And when you talk about the volunteer pool, and you try to engage folks who've maybe gone through camp before and are now young adults, do you have any of them back volunteering during camp?
Yeah, at any camp session, we usually have somewhere between 10 and 20 to 25% of our volunteers are on the spectrum. So maybe somebody loves astronomy, so he leads an astronomy activity. A couple help as counselors because they're really loving and insightful and are great at really hearing the campers out and understanding their perspective. And then we have others that come and help behind the scenes and with activities as well. So it really depends on what their interests are and what their, abilities are, that we can try to find ways that their abilities can shine.
You strike me as a bit of a dreamer, someone who's inspired. In the few minutes we have left, let's talk a little bit. Where do you see Camp Encourage, let's say in the next 10 years or so?
Yeah. Well, we are in the early stages of helping out another camp in Southern California start a very similar camp. And so the dreamer in me wants to continue doing that, planting other seeds so that there are more and more opportunities like this for campers across the nation. I also really want to see more and a more diverse set of campers and leaders come to Camp Encourage. We've been working really hard to reach out to and build relationships and trust with all of our community members in Kansas City. So that's been something that our board and I are very passionate about, is being really intentional about being equitable. And so that's a big dream of mine, is I hope to see more and more diversity and just a better representation of Jackson County, for example, coming to each of our camp sessions, and continuing to grow, whether it be at this current campgrounds, at another campgrounds, or if, in some dreamy fashion, perhaps creating our own campgrounds where it's all very designed, intentionally laid out for our campers and their needs.
What would you like our audience to do? How can we help? Tell us.
Yeah, there's just so many ways to get engaged in Camp Encourage, as a volunteer, as a supporter, as a board member. And I think what's so special about it and why we have such a great retention rate is that you see the impact of your input. You see the impact of your time directly. It's all local. All of our campers are from Missouri and Kansas. 75 to 80% are from Kansas City. You see your scholarship funding going to a specific camper. I think that's what's so great about it, right? Is, those that have been with us since the beginning, they know that it's because of them that we continue to grow. So I just say that if this touches anyone's heart, whether you know somebody that lives, that has autism, or do not, but this touches your heart, reach out and, we'll help plug you in a meaningful way.
Kelly Lee, Camp Encourage, thank you so much for sharing about this incredible organization. If you want to know more, it's campencourage.org. Google it. Go find them. They're doing great work. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you for joining us for KC Cares, Kansas City's nonprofit voice. We're produced by Charitable Communications, also a nonprofit. This KC Cares segment was brought to you by the Ewing Marion Kaufman Foundation, www.kaufman.org. If you'd like to be a guest on KC Cares or underwriting opportunities for the support that we give the community, visit our website, kccaresonline.org, and spread the love. Find us on Facebook and Twitter at KC Cares Radio and on Instagram at KC Cares Online. And don't forget, catch us on Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. on ESPN 1510 a.m. and 94.5 FM. Thank you for joining us on KC Cares.